Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Flash Talk. To introduce myself, my name is Sarah Sutter. I'm an international admissions counselor here at Kent State, and I primarily work with graduate applications. And then we have a special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name is Hannah. I'm an ISSS advisor at Kent State. So I work with all of our current students on immigration matters for the most part.
Yeah, so we're so happy you could join us this morning. Today, our Flash Talk is specifically for admitted students. We want to help you figure out what your next steps are, prepare to come to Kent State, make your travel arrangements, and then how to be successful once you arrive here. So, as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat during our presentation. We'll take any relevant questions and then we can have Hannah and myself answer them. And then if not, we just have some general information for all of you too. So first, Hannah, what is the first step for students after they're admitted? What should they expect?
Yeah, of course. So my very first step I say is to celebrate. You've worked very hard to get here. So yeah, you did it. Love that. And then your second step I say is to log into Flashline. So you can contact IT, you'll receive instructions on how to log in, but Flashline is basically your key to all of the university systems. You're able to do a lot of different things related to Kent State through Flashline. So you're going to want to make sure that you can log into Flashline and get set up, your password set up and everything for future logins.
Yeah, that's really critical that everyone do that step first because you can't do anything else until you've logged into Flashline. So please make sure to follow those instructions when you receive the email. So what kind of things can you do through Flashline? Why is that so important?
Yeah, so when you're at Kent State, Flashline is where you'll see your schedule, you'll see your bill, you'll be able to pay your bill eventually through it. There is like class registration happens through Flashline. You can log in to meet with an advisor through using your Flashline credentials. So really, there's so many different things that are done in Flashline. These are just a few examples. There's even way more than what I'm
Mhm.
saying here, but basically, it is also the key to the ISSS portal, which will be your key for like immigration matters while you're at Kent State as like an F1 or J1 student. So by logging into Flashline, you're able to log into the ISSS portal, which is where you'll start your immigration document journey.
Yeah. So on that topic, how exactly do students start the I-20 or DS 2019 process?
Yeah, so you'll initiate that process by logging into the ISSS portal. So the ISSS portal is the web address isss.kent.edu. You'll be taken to a page, you'll see a button for student login. If you click that button, input your Flashline credentials, it will take you into where you request your I-20. So, as a part of the I-20, there's clear instructions like on that landing page when you log in. It is a lot of information, but it is really detailed and very helpful for when you're requesting that I-20 or DS 2019. Kind of depends on your visa type, but you'll see the very clear instructions for what you need to do, the documents you need to provide, and those steps.
Yeah. And just to let everyone know, you do have to be invited to the ISSS portal. You cannot access it until you're invited. And in order to be invited, you do have to activate your Flashline. So you'll receive an invitation a few days after that happens. So, okay. So what kind of documents are needed for the I-20 or DS 2019, and how long does it usually take to get?
Yeah, a good question. So, you definitely need a copy of your passport. So that'll be like the bio page where you see your face, you see a passport number, kind of that main information page towards the beginning of your passport. And then you'll also need proof of available funding. So what this is essentially in order for us to be able to issue an I-20, you have to show that you have a year of funding for to cover those studies. So this can include a combination of scholarships. It can be checkings or savings accounts, something fixed term deposit accounts, educational or student loans, any of those, like, or a combination of those. Most students use multiple sources of funding. So there's space to upload those documents. There's even more information. Like I said, when you get into that landing page, you'll see detailed information of what like you can upload to count as that. But if you use funding that is not your own, like say it's your parents or an uncle who's sponsoring you, there's also an affidavit form that is signed by your uncle saying, yes, I do support. I love Kent State. Well, they don't have to say that, but it'll just say that they have the funding and that they're pledging to support you essentially. And then the timeline, I think Sarah also asked about the
Yep.
timeline. So all I-20 requests are reviewed within 24 to 48 hours during the week. We do not not on the, if you submit on a Saturday, it's going to take a few extra days to get to in review. Keep an eye on your KSU email because you'll be emailed if there are any additional documentations required initially. And then your status of your submitted I-20 will switch to in review, which means basically that we're waiting on verification from the bank. That is a step in the I-20 process as well to make sure the validity of documents. And then that's where the timeline kind of can get, you're not sure because it really does depend on the bank's timelines and their processing. But the general timeline is we start reviewing within a couple days, and then once the bank approves, then we're able to issue that I-20.
So we do have a question. We were just discussing this, how admitted students get the I-20 form. So first you'll need to log into your Flashline account after you get that information, and then you'll receive the invitation to the ISSS portal. Within the ISSS portal, you can upload your bank documents, and then those will be reviewed, and then the I-20 will be issued. It typically takes about 1 to 2 weeks because we do verify the bank documents, so roughly along those times. Okay, and then we have another question. They're asking if it's too late to apply to Kent State. If you plan to come for the spring term, it is very late for that because we start spring in January, but we are accepting applications for the fall 2024 term. So feel free, or sorry, fall 2025. I know what year it is. So next year, if you would like to come, we are still accepting applications for that. Okay, and if anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. We're talking about the next steps for admitted students today. Okay, so after students have the immigration document that they need, what do they need to do then?
Yeah, so now you begin the process of getting your visa, and that is basically a three-step process. Most students that study at Kent State come on an F1 visa. On occasion, students, if they're a part of an exchange program, it will be a J visa, but for the most part, it's an F visa. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but some of these processes are kind of the same. So that's my disclaimer. But essentially, your first step is going to be to pay a SEVIS fee. So SEVIS is an acronym that we use for the Student and Exchange Visitor Immigration System, I believe. So basically, it is a record-keeping information system. That's what it is. So it's a record-keeping for students that are studying in the U.S. So all students will have a profile. This profile can follow you. If you graduate from Kent State and you get accepted to a master's program, you can keep that same SEVIS through that. But basically, you're just going to pay the fee to start. And that is to fund the system, keep it in place. So you'll start by paying that. You'll get a receipt. And then you're going to apply for your student visa. And to apply for that, you fill out a form known as the DS-160. You can do that online. But essentially, it's just requesting the type of visa. So you're going to request an F visa. If that's the visa type for you, you'll request an F visa with the DS-160. And then once that is complete and your SEVIS fee is paid, you can schedule an interview at a nearby embassy or consulate. So there are some countries have multiple, some have one. So one place that you can interview. So be sure to look up what's around you, and you can apply or you can schedule an interview at one nearby. Something I do always note, some countries have shorter wait periods for an interview and some countries have very long wait periods for an interview. So what we encourage students to do if that wait is very long, like say you're trying to come in fall, but you don't see an interview slot until October, what you can do is you schedule the earliest appointment. that you see, and then you can request an expedited visa interview. So basically, what that means is you submit a request to us, our team, through the ISSS portal that we were talking about before. You submit a request in there, we can issue you a letter to support your request for an earlier interview. So many students we've seen have success with that and be able to interview before the start of their term. So don't stress if you see the interview dates and they look very dire. That's okay. There's a few steps and things that we can try to do, and yeah. So, and there's always options too. Like if it is later, you can work with admissions to defer an application as well. But those are your next steps for visa interviews.
I see a couple of questions in the chat. We'll start with this one since it's
Yeah.
CVIS related. So how much is the CVIS fee?
Yeah, the CVIS fee is $350. And I believe the application for the visa is 180 US dollars. So those are kind of the fees that go directly to like those processes.
Mhm. And then there were a couple of questions about funding. I can take those. So someone is asking if there's funding for graduate students like graduate assistantships. So yes, primarily the funding would come through graduate assistantships, and then those are managed by each program individually. So some programs might have them, some might not. So we just advise that you talk to your program coordinator and just ask if there's funding available and how to apply. You can also check on Handshake, which is Kent State's job hiring platform. Occasionally, there are a few open assistantships that you could apply for, but those do tend to be very rare. So we generally just recommend that you talk to your program coordinator. And then for our undergraduate students, they do get the Global Scholarship. That's our primary scholarship through our office. There's no other funding available through the Office of Global Education, but you can apply to other scholarships through other organizations or Kent State. Kent State scholarship portal is called Scholarship Universe, and you can log on to there and see what's available. But do make sure and the requirements that it's not only for US citizens, because some of them are restricted to that. And then I'm not sure if you know anything about this, Hannah. What loan lenders do international students at Kent usually use?
I'm
I have no
really not
information on this.
sure. Yeah, usually
Yeah.
I don't directly see those, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
The
sure.
financial component is usually handled by the students individually. We don't really have a big hand in that process, unfortunately. Okay, I think that's the primary questions. And then this one is about housing. We'll talk about housing in a little bit, so stay tuned. I promise we will. And then this one we were just talking about. So the visa appointments in certain countries can be really hard to get. So what kind of letter were you talking about, Hannah, that can help with
Yeah.
those?
Yeah. So typically students request, I believe it's like an emergency interview or an expedited interview. I think that language might vary. But essentially, if you submit a request in the ISSS portal for that letter, you can use that letter to support your request for an earlier appointment. So essentially, what the letter says is that you are admitted for a term. We look forward to having you join us in August. And then we just request like that they support your request for an earlier appointment. So it's just like from the university as an official document supporting that request. So I just encourage you to look at your embassy or consulate to see what those expedited interview procedures are. And then we can provide a letter to support your request.
Mhm. Do you have any visa interview tips? I know a lot of students get nervous about this and
Yes.
they're not exactly sure what to say.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say is we do have a whole page on our website about the visa interview, offering general tips and advice that comes directly from what the government kind of also has like general what to expect as well. So we kind of have adapted that on our website as well. So make sure you look for that. But the main thing is to make sure you check with your embassy or consulate that you'll be interviewing at to make sure you have all the documentation that you're going to need for that interview. So generally, you'll need a passport, your I-20 or DS 2019, which is that immigration document issued to you by Kent State. You'll you should have the financial documentation that you provided us. So it should match what's on your immigration document, but have that with you as well. And then your admission letter, and then anything else the embassy or consulate requests. So we can't say necessarily what each embassy or consulate will need. So we say it generally, just make sure you check with them. And then as far as the interview tips go, we have those on the website, but generally you can expect questions about how the program fits into your career plans. Another piece is how you're still linked to your home country. So like how you plan to use your degree when after you graduate and go back home. Like what are your plans? What is linking you to your country? And then reasons to return after is kind of another thing. So typically when students are denied visas, which we will talk about this as well in just a second, but everyone will get a reason for that denial. And a common reason is not like necessarily having evidence of what like ties to your home country. So you can just, I feel like sometimes for students, it's important to just note those ties. And yeah, and then another thing is just to be brief. You don't have to offer if they ask you a yes or no question, you can just say yes or no. You don't have to go into a long explanation. So those are our general tips, but it's kind of going to be a conversation conducted in English.
Yeah. Okay. We have a few more questions. Sorry to jump over to that. But does the scholarship money get deducted from the funds needed for the I-20?
So if you add that into your funds for your I-20. So when you apply for your I-20, you can show your scholarship like letter offer, whatever scholarships you are getting, you can upload as financial documentation.
So yeah, that amount will be taken off the total amount that needed because
Right.
you have that funding, and then you just have to provide the remaining amount. Let's see. This one is about admissions. So yes, we have started issuing decisions for fall 2025. So you should receive a decision soon. If you haven't, some departments make decisions faster than others if you are applying as a graduate student. So that can take a little bit longer depending on which department it is. And then someone's saying they're having trouble reaching their program coordinator. Oop, that's not the right one. So if you're having trouble reaching your coordinator, I would recommend checking the program website and seeing if there's other general contact information on there. Sometimes they have a general department phone number or a general email address, and then you can reach out to that. Sometimes the coordinators get a little bit overwhelmed if there's a lot of messages or, at the end of the semester. So just see if you can find a general office number and then see if you can go from there. So it says sometimes students with graduate assistantship still have a huge deficit to cover, which results in visa denial. So yes, it depends on the specifics of your graduate assistantship. You'll want to talk to your program coordinator to see exactly how much is going to be covered. Some of them only cover part of your tuition and not all of it, and then you would be responsible for covering the remainder. Some of them cover all of your tuition, so it really just depends on the assistantship, and it's best to talk to your coordinator. Okay. So what should students do if their visa is denied for some reason?
Yeah, so you are able to reapply with a new application and interview. And what the State Department recommends is that it's important to know the reason you were denied the first time and present evidence of significant changes in circumstances. So maybe you were denied, didn't have the ties to your home country, but you have a job offer that has since come in, and when you come back, you'll have a job. So like that would be an example. So just showing how the circumstances are different, or if you feel that you didn't convey well your circumstances and that resulted in a denial, you can kind of make sure you have additional evidence for the second time around and reapply.
Yep. And if for some reason you can't get another visa interview before you need to attend, you can always defer your admission too. You're able to defer your admission up to 1 year. So for example, if you're admitted for fall 2025, you can defer all the way to fall 2026 if needed. Okay. So do international students need health insurance?
Yes, they do.
How does that work at Kent State?
Yeah, for sure. So at Kent State, there is the student health insurance plan that international students are enroll for. So essentially, this is provided. Kent State has a contract with an outside company, and essentially, like they provide health insurance for any Kent State students able to use it, but all international students do unless they qualify for a waiver. But essentially, in the US, you do need health insurance. That is the primary like structure of our medical system. I can't speak a ton to it. I don't know a ton about the intricacies of how it works, but what you do need is health insurance. It'll help you pay for doctor's visits and just like to access care. So you do need health insurance, and then the charge for that per semester is added onto your student account. So you will just pay that through your student. It's like a tuition and fee. It'll be paid in that account.
Yep, it'll be paid at the same time as your first tuition
Mm-hmm.
payment, so you don't need to pay anything ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's immunizations required at Kent State. So where can students find the immunization requirements and submit their records?
Yeah, so all of this is done through the Dewey's Health Center. They are the on-campus health center that all Kent State students and like even faculty and staff can take advantage of. And they have information on those requirements online. There's a link to a PDF form that you can fill in your immunizations and then submit through the patient portal, which is also linked on the Dewey's Health Center website. And that is the same portal you'll use it when you are at Kent State. If you do need to schedule an appointment at the health center, it's all done in that place. But there's a spot for you to upload your immunization document in that portal.
Perfect. This question we discussed a little bit earlier, but what requirements should the person submit for the I-20? So you'll need your financial documents. For specific details about that, you can check in the ISSS portal. They should have details, or you can also email our I-20 team. The email address is i20@kent.edu. And then this person's asking if there's a major that provides scholarships. We don't really have information about what's provided by each department, so we just recommend that you contact the department. And then any scholarships from Kent State are also going to be on Scholarship Universe, which is our scholarship portal, so you can check on there. This one I'm not sure about. I don't know if you know, Hannah. How many days after visa approval is the passport received?
It really varies consulate to embassy to consulate. So I'm really not sure, to be
Mhm.
honest. I would just check in with your embassy or consulate.
Yeah. This person's saying when they make their first tuition payment. That depends on when you register for classes. For specific details on the dates, I would recommend checking our Financial Billing and Enrollment Center website. They handle payments, but I believe if you register before January 3rd, the first payment is January 3rd. I think that's the right date. It's early January. And then if you register after January 3rd or whatever that date is to early February, it's not due till early February. It can be paid in parts, but you do have to sign up for the payment plan to do that. So be sure to check their website. I'm not sure if you know this either, Hannah. Can I get my immunizations after I arrive at Kent?
I I know the Dewey's Health Center has immunizations, but I would contact them for
Yep.
questions related to
Yeah.
immunizations.
Perfect. Okay. So what should students pack to come to Kent State?
Yes, I love this question. So the big thing that I always tell students is that you to be prepared for 4 seasons in Ohio. So what I mean by that is today it is very, very, very cold. It's windy. There's snow on the ground. It is quite cold in winter. And at the same time, over the summer in like July and stuff, it was very hot. So I recommend like just knowing that so you can kind of prepare clothes wise. Obviously, once you get to the US, if your country is very warm, typically you can buy winter gear and get winter gear here. But I just let everybody know if you already have boots and you already have 4 season clothes, that's great. Make sure you pack a variety. I also always encourage comfort items from home. So if you have like a favorite stuffed animal or like something that's really meaningful to you, I think it's typically worth bringing with you as well. And then just to remember that you don't have to pack everything like that you'll need for the next like 2 to 4 years. We have lots of things that you can get once you arrive as well.
Mhm. Someone's asking about next steps after they get their visa. We're kind of discussing those, but if you'd like more details, you can check it out on our admitted student checklist. I'll pop that in the chat here, but that's the best place to see all of the next steps that we recommend, and we'll discuss them a little bit more too. So, what are the airports that are nearest to Kent State?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have two main airports that are close. The first is the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. That is the larger of the two. And then we also have the Akron Canton Airport, which is more of a regional airport, but does have some direct flight options to nearby bigger airports. But those are the two main ones. And to kind of get into how you get to Kent, so usually you'll fly to one of those two airports, and then we have a shuttle that you can register for. So we contract with an outside company, and they offer students rides at a subsidized rate. So basically, for $50, they will kind of follow your flight, see when you arrive, pick you up, and bring you to Kent. So they'll either bring you to your dorm that you're going to be staying in, or if you're at a hotel for the first few nights, they can take you there. Your apartment, any of those, they can drive you from the airport to there.
Perfect. I see a question about class registration. We'll be talking about that in just one
Mhm.
moment, so just stay tuned, but I promise we'll get there. So, what should students do if they need to arrive after the program start date, which is the same as the orientation date?
Yeah. So I would recommend first emailing isss.kent.edu. If you're coming like the day or so after orientation, the main thing is you'll need a letter to enter the U.S. after your start date. So if you have a start date of January 9th on your I-20, but you don't come until January 16th, you might get stopped and they're going to have some questions. So you'll need a letter if you're arriving after the date. In order to receive that letter, it works a few different ways. Classes begin for like the spring semester, for example, on January 13th. Students have to arrive by the end of that first week of classes, or they need to defer their admission to a later term, such as fall. For graduate students, it works a little bit differently. All late arrivals are approved directly through the department. We have a late arrival request in the ISSS portal. So if your visa interviews like late, kind of running late, or for any number of reasons, if you need to arrive a few days late, you would want to submit that request in the ISSS portal. If you're an undergraduate student, it's done by the date, but if you're a graduate student, it's done based on approval from your program.
Perfect. So, how can students find on campus housing?
Yeah, so the main resource is the housing department. So I recommend you look at the university housing website. They have information on all the dorms, and through their website, you can also apply for housing. Through that department. So if you are planning to come in January, then you can apply for housing now. The application is open and we encourage you to submit it as soon as possible. It's generally best to submit that application as early as you can. So it is available through the housing website, and all the information is there too. So I recommend exploring there.
Hmm? For students who want to live off campus, what are the requirements for that?
Yeah, so generally the requirements for undergrads, you have to be 20 years old, have earned 60 plus credit hours, or have a special circumstance. If special circumstances are approved on a case by case basis, so I can't speak exactly to what it is, but if you think you have a special circumstance that warrants an off campus exemption, you can always try for it. Graduate students are able to live off campus. There is no on campus requirement for it. And the main resource I always recommend students start for finding housing off campus is on that same university housing website. If you go all the way to the right, there is a tab and a link to like local housing. So in that list, there's a bunch of different like apartments that are in Kent or like near to Kent. So I recommend exploring those. You can reach out like on a case by like individually to different apartments. You can see what's available and what might fit what you're looking for in a house, and also the budget you have for it.
Yeah, someone was asking before how much an apartment is. It really varies depending on the place and what living situation you want. I looked recently, and apartments in Kent were anywhere from about $600 a month to 1,600 or more, depending on what you want. So we really just recommend looking around to kind of see what the going rate is. So So, how can students register for classes? This is always a big question.
Yeah, and this is a good question because it also depends. So for undergraduate students, I always tell them that you do have the opportunity to register once you are in Kent. So the day after International Student Orientation would be that day that you would get to meet face to face with an advisor. So keep in mind that is an option. We are working on an earlier registration option as well, which is once you receive your visa, scheduling a virtual appointment with an advisor in your college to help you look through your class options, talk through like requirements and all of those like kind of things. So you can do it virtually. One thing I do note is that undergrads typically have 2 placement tests that they need to take before you can register. An advisor through your college can kind of explain more about that. But there's, I think, a math and a writing one that you'll take. So keep that in mind. For graduate students, I just recommend you contact your program coordinator. Graduate programs are a lot less, or they're just different. They vary more from program to program because they're so different.
Mhm.
So I recommend reaching out to your program coordinator. One thing I do tell all students, especially because like the visa situation, sometimes it works out, sometimes it takes longer than you think. So just to remember, if you register for classes, we typically encourage students to wait until they have a visa for that semester. But also, if you do register and something happens and you're not able to make it to the US for that semester, remembering to drop all of those classes, which you can do through Flashline.
Yeah. So this person said they're waiting on a GA award to create their Flashline. I would not recommend waiting. It's really better to create your Flashline because that's the first step for everything. Even if you're not sure about your funding yet, that doesn't happen until the I-20 step, which is after you create your Flashline. So I would really recommend doing that first, and then you can figure it out during the I-20 process. And then this student's asking when the summer break is. So typically this starts around early to mid May,
Mhm.
and then that goes till about mid August. So those months are summer break. You can take classes if you want to after you're here, but if you'd rather go home or go traveling, you can do that instead. Okay. So what should students do after they arrive to Kent State?
Yeah, a great question. So typically, once you arrive to Kent State, I always recommend resting first. I know many students have a very long journey, so take a minute. You don't have to do anything that very second in most instances. So make sure you rest. And then there's an online check in the ISSS portal that I recommend as your next step. So essentially, you'll log into isss.kent.edu. There is an icon that looks like a check mark in the request center, and you will go through that and submit that request. As a part of that, you'll upload a picture of your visa and also your I-94, which is your official entry record into the US. So we have students upload all those documents as their first step. And then if you're an undergraduate student, we request that you come to Van Campen Hall to meet with an ISSS advisor. So Van Campen Hall is where OGE, the whole office is. So you will come once you submit that check-in request online, or if you are struggling and you have questions with the check-in request, you can just come to Van Campen Hall, especially in the couple like week or two in the beginning of the semester and leading up to it. We have drop-in advising for those incoming students to help get you checked in. So you can just come during the business hours and someone will be able to meet with you, kind of answer any first questions you have, and help get you oriented. So for undergraduates, meeting with an advisor is required. For graduate students, you have to do the online check-in. And if you'd like to come meet with us, we are happy to do that and answer any questions you have, but it is not required. So there's kind of some flexibility, but generally those are the first few steps that you'll take.
Yeah. And a lot of people are curious about submitting their final transcripts because they get notifications
Mhm.
about that. So that can be done anytime during your first semester at Kent State. So you don't have to do it the first day or immediately rush to our office. So feel free to take a week or two to kind of get settled. And then you can bring your final transcripts to us. So you'll need to bring anything that you originally submitted when you applied. So that can include your transcripts, your degree certificates, mark sheets for some students. So you'll just want to bring that to our office. We'll make a copy of it and then give the original back to you. So you don't need to worry about losing your documents or anything like that. And then, do you have any final tips for our international students as we wrap up here?
Yeah, my main one is to make sure you check your Kent State email. That is so important. We will send our, like, the international student advisors will send it to you. Just important mail related to your immigration status, your documents. So make sure that you're checking your Kent State email. It's also important for classes. That's how your professors will reach you too. So make sure you check your email. And another thing I always say is don't be afraid to reach out for help. So many people at Kent State are here to help you succeed. We want you to succeed, and we have resources that we can connect you with to make sure that happens. So if you have questions, if you need help, please reach out. If you're not sure where to go, we're always happy to be a first step for you and kind of direct you to where you need to go. We don't have all the answers to questions, but we can direct you to someone that can help you.
Mhm.
And then my final tip is to get involved on campus. So your Kent State experience will just be so much better. You'll meet so many more people with involvement. We have a department called the Intercultural Student Life that is so ready to help you connect. And like they have a lot of different programming and resources to help connect you to student life on campus. So just be sure to reach out and, yeah, make the most of your time.
Yeah. And I know we didn't have a chance to get to everyone's questions today. I'm so sorry. But if you have anything else you need to talk about, since you're admitted students, we recommend that you email isss@kent.edu. That's Hannah's team, and they will be happy to help you with anything you need to help prepare for your experience at Kent State. And we really hope to welcome you all in January or in next fall if you're being admitted for that term. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Hannah, for helping answer all these questions. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
So, bye.